Hello, Frank Turner.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I just had a show that went quite well, I thought.
Good.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm in the guest area at Reading, which is a place of many memories.
Chill for the rest of the day, or?
Unfortunately not. I've got to drive to Leeds today for extremely boring logistical reasons, but I'm in my car this weekend, and we're on at sort of the same time tomorrow in Leeds, so I've got to get on there.
You're going to catch some bands once you finish tomorrow?
I hope so, but I do have 2 festivals tomorrow. I'm headlining another one as
Why?
well.
Why do you do this to yourself?
It's a valid question. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. Like when I started out for the first, I mean, this is my 25th year as a touring musician this year. At the beginning, it was like my policy in my early days was say yes to everything and deal with the logistics later. And I'm now 41, which is a disgusting age for a musician to be. And I'm starting to realise that my ability to deal with it later is sort of diminishing a little bit. But tomorrow's tomorrow, and then I've got a show on Sunday, and then I've got my wedding anniversary, and then I fly to California.
Lovely.
Yeah, I know.
Busy.
Yeah, busy.
times.
But it's good to be busy. It's better than sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring.
No, absolutely. Most recently, your latest album
Yes.
came out last year.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it for those who haven't heard it
It's
yet.
called FTHC, and the HC stands for hardcore, as in hardcore punk. I grew up listening to that kind of music. I'm sort of known by lots of people as kind of folk rock, folk punk, whatever, which is fine.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with that, but it was a return to kind of a slightly heavier type of music, which I really enjoyed, and it got to number 1, so he said showing off, but I'm allowed to show off. It was really good. I'm really proud of it. I've literally, the day before yesterday, finished recording the next one. So it's not mixed yet, but it's recorded, and that'll be out next year.
How's it sounding?
Good. It's another punk record. I had such a lovely time making a punk record, I thought I'd make another one.
Why not?
Yeah.
What was it the plan to make another punk record then? Or?
It's just kind of fun. We just had a really good time touring this record. Obviously, we made it during the pandemic, really, which was quite weird. We made a lot of it sort of over the internet, which was odd.
Yeah.
But the act of touring it has just been really fun. We've been doing loads of kind of punk rock festivals. Did a lot of touring with Rancid this year, which has been amazing because they're one of my very favourite bands. I kept my trousers on when Rancid were around.
Really?
And what I mean by that is that I have a massive Rancid tattoo on my leg. And I thought it would be embarrassing if they saw that. So I kept my trousers on.
I think so.
But, and just generally... it's sort of, I feel like I've sort of slightly kind of settled into my niche a little in a way that I quite like. But it's kind of fun to be on album 10 and be playing more aggressive shows and releasing more aggressive records than I have to date, and that feels kind of slightly perverse to me in a good way.
Do you have plans then going forward of what you want to do after this one? Do you want to keep it heavy, or are you going to revert
I don't know.
back?
I have this plan in my back pocket to make a proper 70s FM country record, like George Jones kind of Merle Haggard style record. In all honesty, I'm not sure if I've got the chops to do it just yet. It's a deceptively simple type of music, but I love it. That said, it's probably annoy the hell out of everybody if I do that. So, which means I'm more likely to do it, to be honest. But we'll see. I mean, we're going to get this in the can, and we'll be on tour for that for another couple of years, maybe more. So we shall see.
And you're one for doing Download as well, and I'm sure you can sneak in a nice country track while you're playing that festival.
Yeah, a bit of pedal steel. It might be the first ever pedal steel at Download.
Yeah.
That would be something to go on my tombstone, along with the fact that I gave Jason Newsted from ex-Metallica his first ever sip of whiskey. Which at the time I absolutely point blank refused could possibly be true, but his wife was like, no, he's never drunk whiskey before. We were hanging out at a show, he came to see me play, and I gave him a shot of whiskey. We went on, and we were opening for Jason Isbell, American country singer, and then when we came off, he was like falling down the stairs pissed, and his wife was shooting evils at me, and I was just like, I'm just going to go over here now and sort of hide. But I did, that is going on my tombstone.
I think so. You're going to have a big tombstone with
It's going to be a big one,
there.
yes. And hopefully not for a while yet.
Indeed, yes. Many years ahead of you, I'm sure. Now, you're off to California, but once you're done doing that, people can see you live, can't they? What's the plan?
It's funny, like at the moment, our UK front, if you like, live, is slightly, we're making plans for next year. The new record will be out in the spring. There's going to be an insane amount of touring around that. There might... am I going to tell you this? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're possibly going to try for the world record for most numbers of shows in 24 hours.
Ooh.
So that might be a thing.
Hang on, I'm sure I've heard this record before.
Well, it's currently 12.
Is it 12?
Which seems weak to me.
Yeah.
I once did 24 shows in 24 hours for a music video, but it was awful. And indeed, there are stipulations. A lot of them were house shows, which wouldn't have counted apparently. So we're going to try and do them all as proper gigs in 24 hours.
Where?
So if anyone wants to come to a gig at 4 a.m, please do let me know.
I'm sure you could. Yeah, I'm sure people would be.
That's the problem with it, is that you have to do some of them in the dead of night, sort of definitionally.
Do you have to have people come and watch?
Yes.
I'm sure you do.
You do, yes. You have to sell tickets.
Cheaper tickets for the 4 a.m. slot.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Where are you going to do this? Is it?
In the UK.
Yeah. London?
All over. No, the cities have got to be a certain distance apart from each other, is the other thing. So it's got to be different cities.
You've got a team planning this.
I do, and this is the thing with most of my crazy ideas, is that I just sort of come up with ideas and then just waft them
give it to someone else,
towards the people who actually have a plan and some sort of logistical capability.
I'm sure you've got some other crazy ideas.
I do. I mean, but we'll be doing a lot more UK touring for the new record, which I'll be stoked about as and when we get to announce that. I'm coming up. Today's show was number 2,798.
Wow!
I count my shows, and lots of people have been asking about show 3,000. We have plans. That will be basically what I'm telling you is there's loads of stuff coming, and I can't tell you what any of it is in
planning for
detail.
At least another 100 gigs. Then,
exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot coming.
Good. And you've toured many places around the world. Where haven't you been to yet?
Well, okay, so I'm pretty magpie. I mean, as evinced by the fact that I've got my show numbers, I'm quite kind of stat heavy. I'm quite OCD about that kind of thing. I've done 49 countries. I want to play everywhere I haven't played.
Yes,
is the short answer to your question. I do have a wish list. I've finished my record deal. I've signed a new one with a more internationally sort of facing thing. So hopefully we've got shows coming up in places like Turkey and Japan and Korea and places I've never been before. My white whale is South America. I had a South American tour booked and on sale that was selling very well for April 2020.
Yeah,
and it broke my fucking heart that we had to cancel that, but we're working on getting that back on the books. But the short answer, as I say, is that if I haven't played there, then I want to.
Every country.
I mean, I'd imagine that there are probably some bits of kind of like Central Asia and sort of Sub-Saharan Africa which may not have the infrastructure for gigs. I mean, if I'm wrong about that, then fucking let me know. I'll be there.
I'm sure we can do a little pop-up thing.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I mean, you know, it's like, I mean, the risk of getting slightly kind of like emo even for a second. Like, you know, the thing I like about music is that it brings out the things that we have in common. So the maddest show I ever played, probably. I mean, out of 3,000 shows, I'm loath to pick one. But I do a bunch of work with a charity in Sierra Leone, which deals with homeless musicians.
Yep.
And it's one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's some of the poorest people in that country. It's an extremely humbling experience, and blah, 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 blah. And there's a guy I know out there called Fauji, who's the leader of a kind of gangster rap troupe called the Blackstreet Family, and he was putting on a rap battle in a car wash in East Freetown, and it wasn't just a rap battle, it was an attempt to broker a peace agreement between all the East Freetown gangs, of which he's the leader of one.
Yep.
And he said to me before it happened that his aim was for no one to die, and then so they had sort of 10 acts lined up, and then he turned to me and he went, "Oh, and you're opening up," and I said, what? And it was like I was stood on a pile of like pallets with the most blown out PA in the history of blown out PAs, with an acoustic guitar, feeling incredibly white and middle class, to a crowd of, you know, East Freetown kind of gangbanger type dudes, lovely people, but like, and then they were like, "Right, what have you got?" And I was like, "Here's a song about missing the last bus home." Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like
relates really well.
Yeah,
to them,
but you know what? I gave it my best shot, and people got involved in it and sung along with the sing-alongs and all the rest, and that's what I mean about it. It sort of demonstrated that, like, despite everything, there was still more in common than separating, and that was. I know that there's a risk of sounding like a twat, essentially talking about all of this, but like it's. I've been going out for 5 years now. It's a wonderful place, and they're brilliant musicians, and they've been very generous to me.
Yeah, good. I'd like to talk a little bit about the writing side of things. So, for you, at the moment anyway, how do tracks tend to start off for you?
Snippets is the answer to your question. I feel like there's two bits of my writing process. There's the bit that feels like fishing, where you sort of sit on the side of the river and with your rod out and hope something bites. And there, you can talk about best creative practice and trying to put yourself in the way of inspiration and all that sort of blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But essentially, to a degree, you're just sort of trying to be open to ideas, and they come from somewhere, and you can be as mystic or not mystic about that as you want. But I end up with these piles of sort of like anything from like a word I like. There's a song on the new album that includes the word foundling. I really like the word foundling.
Wow.
All the way through to having like 2 verses, don't have music. On the other hand, I'll have everything from kind of like a chord sequence I like to a melody I like to like a guitar lick I like or whatever. And then the second part of it is what I think is the cut and shut bit, where essentially you're like a sort of crazy maniac in a junkyard, and you pick up some bits from one part and bits from the other, and you sort of smoosh them together and see if anything sparks. And then towards the end, you polish. And then you have a song.
Yeah, good. And are you one of those people who writes and writes and writes loads of lyrics and then see what works at the time?
Kind of. Or? Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to like write poems and then make them into songs. I regard poetry and lyric writing as 2 separate endeavours, and I'm slightly terrified of poetry as a concept. I have enormous respect and admiration for people who write poetry, because I write with musical structure in mind, and it's a very different thing. The idea of sitting down with a blank piece of paper and just going, okay, it's like, I'm like, how the fuck do you do that? Yep. But yeah, so I do, but I have these snippets essentially. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'll be in the shower and just have a few words that arrive, and then run around shouting pen, pen, pen in my birthday suit, whilst my crew shudder and avert their gaze.
They're used to it by now.
They are. I have been doing this a while.
Yeah, I'm sure. Is there lyrics that you haven't used yet? Is there a lyric that you can think of that you really want to use, but you might not have used yet?
I mean, yeah, but I'm not going to tell you.
You could tell me. It'd be one of those you heard it here first.
I suppose so. I'd have to check my notes is the answer to that. I mean, the thing is, because you're talking to me as I've literally just finished the record, everything at the top of that pile is currently in play.
You're trying not to think of those lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, it's always quite satisfying if you have something that has been around for a while and then it finds a home.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's stuff that's been around for years. Do you know what I mean? And like, or even just sort of subject matter for songs and things like that. There's a song. Here we go. There's an unreleased song on the new record that. The opening line is, "If I had a penny for every time that someone said," which is a common phrase, but it's got this driving rhythm to it. If I had a penny for every time that someone said, and I've had that in my back pocket for ages, and I had to figure out what the next part of that sentence was.
Yeah,
and I have, and you'll hear the second part of that when the record comes out. But yeah, so there's little things like that.
Perfect, Frank. It's been a pleasure having a catch up.
What a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Cheers.